Alrighty. Let's get off to a little slow start here this morning. My name's Devin. I'm with Club Express. I'm part of the education team. Today we're going to be doing another one in our series of kind of basics getting started for new administrators. We're going to go over some of the kind of general tools that administrators will use. This is a series that we're doing just to kind of make sure that as people join Club Express or as people have board or administrator or coordinator turnover, the people running the websites on the Club Express platform, that changes hands for different organizations throughout the year. We want to make sure that those new administrators are empowered to kind of like access all the basics and know how to kind of get started administrating their platform. So we'll get started in just a second here. Before we get too deep into it, I'd like to go over just a little bit of housekeeping. So you'll notice all of your microphones are muted. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function in your Zoom window. So there should be at the bottom of your Zoom screen an option for chat and an option for Q&A. If you don't see Q&A, it might be under the little three dots more button. I have my team member Evan in the chat. He'll be able to answer questions throughout. We will do a few minutes of Q&A towards the end to kind of go over if there's any questions for something that I need to kind of reiterate, or if there's any sort of additional questions that would be really helpful for me to cover. We'll spend some time on Q&A. I also do want to call out that we put all of the recordings for these webinars on our YouTube channel. You will find our YouTube channel at youtube.com if you search for clubexpress.com. So you should see it on the screen. It is Club Express with the dot spelled out. So it's Club Express, DOTCOM. You can subscribe there to see when we upload videos. We also put all of our kind of information up on that channel. So if we ever have tutorial videos or version announcements, anything like that, anytime we have major changes, we try to do either a training video or a webinar, and we store that information on our YouTube channel. You can also find us on most of the other social media platforms. We just kind of post regularly when we have, updates or things like that. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, all those kind of things. I do want to call out before we get into it as well. We have been really kind of for a while now putting out a lot of kind of quality of life updates to Club Express. And sometimes people are curious about where you can find a list of things that we've been working on. We do send out release notes every other week to all administrators. We started that in 2024, and we're keeping that going. If you have curiosity or you want to look back on some of the things that we've published, you can go to help.clubexpress.com, and one of the categories is release notes, and you can actually see the by date what items were released on those periods of time. So you can see kind of a log of all of the changes we're working on. Another thing before I get into the overview of today's session, I do want to call out that, there's been over the last few months a lot of kind of small but cumulative changes to the way Club Express processes payment. We're primarily working with Stripe, and we've got two different payment options. I won't go into extreme detail on that today. I will talk about payments a little bit. But in the next week or two, administrators should be getting an email invitation to a webinar that's going to go really granular, really detailed, and really step by step into the payment processing process. So how payments are submitted, how you get your money, how you kind of can route that money to your bank account, and then also how to get reports and process refunds on those different payment options. So we'll be doing kind of a more produced webinar on that topic in about, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. We haven't nailed the date down, but keep an eye on your email. We'll be sending one out to kind of go over that topic in a week or two. All right, so let's get into what we're going to be talking about today. Today, again, as I mentioned right at the top, this is focusing in on Club Express for new administrators or people who have set up a new Club Express website, or if you've had board turnover and you are now, finding yourself as an administrator for a Club Express platform and you don't have experience. So what we're going to go over today is just the core functionalities that every administrator should be at least a little bit familiar with. We're going to talk about just getting logged into the site, and then how you can access your own password controls, so how you can reset your own password. And one thing that's really important to a lot of administrators right off the bat is how to reset password for other members. So if you ever have, members having issues getting into the website, we'll go over how to kind of allow members to reset their own password. We're going to go over the control panel. So Club Express, anyone who's even logged into their own website is familiar with the concept of our control panel. If you're not, we're going to go over where we store all of the Club Express configurations for your website. So if you are an administrator or coordinator, you'll have access to the control panel in some way, and that's where you can go to make any sort of change on your website. Everything that an administrator wants to do in any way is somehow located on the control panel. So we'll go over how to kind of get around and get comfortable with it and how to kind of organize it to your needs. We'll also go over how to add other administrators, also how to remove other administrators. That's something that happens a lot with our organizations, especially volunteer-based organizations, where someone will serve for a year and then that person will no longer be an administrator. They'll pass it off to someone else. So you might need to add an administrator and take another administrator away. We'll also talk about the difference between an administrator and a coordinator. So they are people with more limited functions, but still have kind of elevated access, elevated security control over the website. And we'll talk about how to set them up. Then we'll also take a look at the people manager, where to find our members, where to find our non-members, how to update their information, how to, look through their profiles. That segues really nicely into tracking user payments. So we can actually, from the people manager, look at individual people and see their payments. We'll also talk about the different types of payments you can either manually submit or allow a member to submit. And then we'll also set up some simple blast emails to kind of get in contact with your members. So those are kind of the primary things that any administrator can do. A lot of you are probably thinking, well, I need to set up events for my website. I totally agree. I think when it comes to Club Express, some of our developers joke that we should be called Events Express because that's like one of the core functions. But we have a lot of tutorial videos and webinars on events, and events is so crucial to Club Express and it's so big. I usually don't like to include it in these kind of general overviews because I can spend a whole hour and a half just talking about events. And we do that somewhat regularly. So we'll be having webinars on events over the next month or two here as well. So keep an eye out for that. So I'm not going to cover events today just because I'll get sucked into talking for way, way too long. But before I ramble any further, let's get into our session today. So I'm going to start with just the simple process of logging out and logging into the website and how we can access the option to reset our own password, reset a password for members, or how members can reset their own passwords as well. So let me go ahead and switch over to my screen share. I'm going to show you our demo website and get started. So this is the Northwest Balloon Club. You should see the screen now. I'm currently logged in as an administrator, but when we're talking about the login process, I'm actually going to log out for just a second. When I go to my name in the upper right-hand corner, this is where we'll find the option to log out. So when we first land on your ClubExpress website, if you aren't logged in, the member login is usually in the top right corner or the top left corner. The default for most ClubExpress templates is the top right. When you click member login, this is the login screen you'll see. Now you might see your own website's branding, your own website's menu, but the actual page right here will be the same for just about every ClubExpress website. You'll see the login option, a place to put your username and password. I like to call out here because something that gets overlooked a lot is there's the login and cancel option, but you also have the forgot my username option, or if you have trouble logging in, there's an option to click and go look at the help articles regarding, password lockout. So if your members are ever getting in contact with you saying, hey, it's not taking my password, I don't know what to do, you can ask them, well, have you tried clicking the forgot my username password button? That will pop up a little window for them to enter their email and their name. And if that matches an account in the system, it will send them an email to reset their password, just like with a lot of other tools you'll find on other websites. So it should be a fairly familiar process to reset your password. What it'll do is it'll actually send you a temporary password. You'll use that to log in, and then it's just going to ask you to re-log in with that temporary password and set up a new password. If you click on the click here for assistance, it'll take you to the help system where you can either submit a ticket or read the help articles related to password reset. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and get logged in. I'm going to log in with a saved password here. I'm logging in as Martin Smith, who is an administrator. You'll notice when I log in as an administrator, you'll see my name in the upper right-hand corner. My name isn't Martin Smith. That's just our dummy administrator that we use on our test site. But you'll also notice there's two extra things that some people may not see. You'll see the control panel option and you'll see the favorites option. Those only show up if you are either an administrator or a coordinator in some fashion. So you have to have some level of additional access in order to see those options. If you are not an administrator or coordinator, administrator, or if you've logged in on, say, like an extra account that you have that's not an admin, you won't see these two options. You'll just see your name. When you see your name, you'll see things like, your little summary, your little profile picture. You can click to get to your profile. But when it comes to logging in and logging out, I like to point out there's two options for logging in and logging out. There's an option to log in as a different user, which will take you right back to that login page. So if a lot of our administrators will set up a non-administrator account for them to do all of their kind of, they'll pay their membership dues. They'll sign up for events on a non-admin account, but then they'll switch over to an admin account for their, administrator duties. So some people do it that way, and this login as a different user option is really useful. It's also useful for, households that have multiple memberships. So if they're sharing a computer or sharing an iPad or something, and you're already logged in as one account, instead of clicking log out and then having to click member login again, you can just hit login as a different user, and it'll kind of skip a couple clips for you, get you right back to that login screen. If you're having trouble with your password, if you are already logged in, but you're not sure of your password and you want to make sure to manually reset it, you can reset your own password once logged in at any time from your profile. So if I click on my name and click on member profile, there is an option in my member profile. You'll see a summary of my membership and a bunch of membership detail info. You'll see one of the options is username password right there. And that's where I can go to change my own username and password. I can plug in a preferred username. I can actually change my username here as well and plug in a new password to update that information. Once I save, it'll just apply that to my account. That is how I change my own password. Something that comes up a lot is how do I reset a password for my members? We're going to go into detail about the people manager and the kind of like how to search people out, but really quickly, I'm going to zip through the people manager. If I wanted to change a password for another one of my members, I can go to the control panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the people manager. And for now, before I talk about all of the filtering and buttons here, I'm just going to hit search. I might search by last name by putting in a last name here, but ultimately I can usually just find people by hitting search. It'll give me my entire list of members and I can say, hey, I need to change the password for Jerry Butcher here. And what I'll do is I'll go over and click on the pencil. And you'll see, because I'm looking at someone else's profile now as an administrator from the people manager, I can actually come in here and you'll notice that reset password looks a little bit different. I, as an administrator, cannot manually assign someone else's password. What I can do is from this page, I can go over here and click reset password. Now, there's two things that might happen when you click reset password. If the person has an email address connected to their profile, when I hit reset password, it'll say, are you sure? And I'll say yes. And then it will send an email to that person connected to the email address that they have listed in their profile. You can actually see a little preview of their current email address. And that email will have a temporary password for them to log in with. Alternatively, if someone doesn't have an email, so for example, Jerry Butcher here does not have an email address connected to his profile, if I click reset password, it'll say, are you sure you want to reset the password for this person? And I can say yes. Because it doesn't have an email to send to, it'll just give me a username and password on the spot. And that is a temporary password. And then I can text or email this to Jerry manually outside of ClubExpress, or I can just call him and say, hey, it's Jerry 4165, log in with that temporary password. And then once Jerry uses that, it'll ask Jerry to just set a new password on the spot once that temporary password is used. So that's how we go through the process. Again, we're just heading to the control panel. We're clicking on People Manager from the People tab of the control panel. We are searching usually by last name for the person we want to reset the password for, clicking on the pencil to get into their profile, and then clicking the reset password option. If they have an email, it'll send them an email. If they don't, it'll just pop up a little window for us to fill in their contact or fill in their password. Someone asked, how long is the temp password email good for? It doesn't expire. So if someone is given a temporary password, that will be their password until they use it. If they lose that email, you can always just go hit reset password again. So I know a lot of times we're used to systems where it says like, you must use this code within 10 minutes or you must use this code within 5 minutes. That code doesn't, the temporary password reassigned doesn't expire. So as long as they have access to it, they can go back and use it. Obviously, obviously, once they log in with that temporary password, it's going to make them set a new one, and that from that point on, it'll be expired. Or if they lose that email or don't get it or something, you can always just do it again, and it'll give them a new randomized temporary password. All right, so I know I jumped past the control panel for a second. Let's take a break and let's go back to the control panel. So when I'm on my website, I'm logged in as an administrator. We see my name. We kind of talked about the control panel and favorites options up here. The control panel is where I go to get access to everything I might need to do as an administrator. Any controls, any back end functionality that is not available to normal members is going to live in the control panel. When I click on control panel, it's going to show me a few options. It's going to show me the different tabs of the control panel. So we've got things like dashboard, we've got people, website, bunny, club, communication, support. Those are all the different tabs of the control panel. There are two reasons that an administrator might see something different. One, if you are working with what we call an aging in place village, there might be an extra tab called services. That is an option for people to volunteer to help other people out. If you're not with an aging in place village, then you won't see services as one of the tabs here. And there's nothing there that you're missing out on. It's just specific to that type of organization. The other note about the different tabs across the top of the control panel is that the club tab might not be called the club tab for your group. It is the tab that lives between the money tab and the communications tab. So it's between those two. It might say organization, it might say association, it might say chapter. There's a lot of different organizations that work for ClubExpress, and they all refer to themselves slightly differently. And so when you're setting up your website for the first time, it'll ask you, are you a club or are you an association? And it will reflect that here in this tab. So anytime I say club tab, just keep in mind I might be referring to the association or organization, league, different options that might show up in between the money and communications tab. The different tabs of the control panel are each of them contains different functions. So when we look at the people tab of the control panel, these are all of the options that are related to the people interfacing with our website. So the information stored about our members, the things our members can interact with, that is what lives in the people tab. And it kind of holds true through the rest of the tabs. When we look at the website tab, this is where we can come and change our web pages. We can change our home page. We can add things to our website calendar. When we go to the money tab, this is where we control our finances. We can ask for donations and storefront. The club tab has all of our organization set up. So things like, where we can change the name of our organization, where we can assign our administrators, where we can look at like full organization data exports. There's a lot of tools in here related to just kind of general organization information. Communications is where we have people, where we store our communications. So emailing is where we send out blast emails to all of our members or all of our users, or even just small groups of members. We can do things like sending text messages. We can set up blogs, set up forums. That is where, all of those communication tools live. Most of the tabs of the control panel, you'll notice, are organized in roughly the same way. So each of these tabs that I've just talked about has a grouping called admin functions. These are admin only tools that we can use to kind of get information or review information about the website, or even make changes to, people. So for example, in the people tab of the control panel under admin functions, we have the people manager. That is something only an administrator can interact with, and they can go in and change information about people, your members or your non-members. We also have the website modules section. This is slightly different. We do have options. If I click on any of these options, I'm accessing the administrator side of that tool, but these are also options that have member interactive sides. So if it's a website module, that means that our website users might be able to interact with it. So the check-in desk allows for users and members to check in. So because it has a non-admin side to it, that's what we call a website module. It's something our users interact with. And then the bottom section down here is our setup section. These are primarily our set it and forget it kind of configurations. Now, these things change over time, so it doesn't just mean that once you set it up, you'll never touch it again, but it just does mean that these are the lesser configured options. So once they're set up, usually they don't change more than, once or twice a year or something like that. So they live in this bottom section down here because once they're configured, they're usually left alone for long periods of time. There are two tabs of the control panel I haven't set up yet, which is the dashboard or the support section. Those two are organized a little bit differently. The dashboard is an at a glance report section. So this is where we can come in and we can look at quick little visual graphics to see information about our organization. So we can see, for example, I have my dashboard to show us, how many members do we have of each status. So we can say, okay, great. I've got 56 non-members. I've got 33 expired members. I've got 2 prospective members. It just shows me all the different statuses in my organization and how many people are, occupying those different statuses. That's just one of many different types of little dashboard reports that we can see here. Important to note about dashboards, they aren't unique to your organization, they're unique to your administrator profile. So you can change your own dashboard and it will show you information about your organization, but your dashboard can be different from your treasurer's dashboard, can be different from your membership manager's dashboard. So everyone can have kind of their own layout, and you can easily just, kind of click around and move. There's an option to configure in the upper right to change this dashboard and change it to, fit your needs as whatever role you, fill in your organization. The other tab that we kind of regularly access in the control panel is the support tab on the opposite side of the control panel. I will call out the support tab. Do keep in mind, we are actually planning to make some updates to the support tab. So right now there's things like, our previous boot camps, access to our online help, our administrator forum. We're going to revamp this page to have a little bit more on it. Things like a way to submit a ticket to support team, and better links to our videos. So this will be changing. The support tab will stay. We're just going to update the content on it in the next probably month or two here. So keep an eye on that. So right now it looks this way. It'll probably change in a period of time. So that's how we get around the control panel and how the control panel is laid out. What we can do here before I get into kind of setting up administrators, I do like to point out there's 2 things that show up all over the control panel, no matter what tab you're in. And that's the show notice button and the configure button. Whenever you click on the show notice button, it'll show if we have any notices. It'll add a 4th box at the top here, and it'll show if we have any kind of notices from ClubExpress. So if we're ever going to have downtime for maintenance, or if there's any sort of important adjustments to the way ClubExpress works or important updates, we will put a notice out, and you'll notice that pun not intended. You will notice that the notice will show up here automatically. So you don't have to click show notices. Whenever we have a new one, it should automatically show it to you. Once you've seen it, you can click hide notice and it'll disappear. And then you can always click show notice again to look at it. You can also click here to go see previous notices if you want to. That's just a way to, for us to kind of get information out to our administrators to make sure that they're aware of anything, especially things like downtime or module updates. The other button you'll see, depending on the tab you're on, you'll see different options for configure. When you click on configure in any tab of the control panel, it will open up the configuration option for that, and you'll see all the different functions that are in the tab of the control panel. So right now you'll see we're highlighted on the people tab, and these are all the different functions that are available in the people tab of the control panel. We can do 2 things here. If it's a website module, so something like our gift memberships, we can come over here. We'll see the gift membership module. It's a module that allows people to send a gift to someone who isn't a member and pay for that person to become a member as a gift. So they can gift a membership. We can configure modules here. So we can either turn it on and off. So if we say, hey, we don't really do gift memberships, we can disable it. We can say, hey, we're going to set it to inactive while I, as an administrator, interact with that module. And then maybe I'll turn it back on later, or I can leave it as active and allow people to interact with that module. You'll also see the options to change the name and nomenclature for that module. So you'll see we at ClubExpress call it gift memberships, but you might call it, member sponsorships or something like that. So we might change the name here and say, I don't want to call it gift membership. We'll call it, member sponsorship. If I spelled that right. So we say member sponsorship. You'll also see that there's something called menu text, and that is how this module shows up on the menu. So we might call it, you know, member sponsorship, but on the menu, we want it to be a button that says, sponsor a membership. So it is an active button that people click on and say, hey, I would like to sponsor a membership. And then the third box here that we see is the option to change the browser title. So that's what shows up in the tab of your web browser when you're on this page. So we could leave that alone. We could change it to either of these options. We can kind of get creative with that. We also see the option to set up visibility. So there's only two options for visibility. There is the option to make it available to any website visitor, meaning whether you're a member or not, you have access to it. And then there's also the option to say this is a members only tool. If you set it to members only, then only members have the access to it. Whenever a non-member tries to access this module, it'll let them know, hey, you have to log in to access this. If you're not a member, then you don't have access. And then you'll see membership type. If you choose members only, you can actually limit it to only specific members. So we'll say, hey, local businesses and students don't get to use the membership sponsor option, and we can uncheck them here, and we can limit membership type by membership type who has access to this particular module. And then finally here, we've got the option for quick link text. So you'll notice ClubExpress has these kind of URLs at the top that say things like, clubexpress.com/content.axpx page ID. You don't want to have to write that out or spell that out for someone. You can say, hey, when someone wants to access the sponsorship or gift membership, they can just go to mywebsite.com/gifts. And so it'll, kind of it'll override that option. So when someone types that into their URL bar, it goes right to this module. It's a way to kind of simplify navigating your website. The other thing you'll have access to when you're looking at the configure option in the control panel for any tab, you'll see the coordinator option. So we're looking at gift memberships. We can assign someone to be a coordinator from right here. This is a really useful option. I'm going to talk more about coordinators in a few minutes. This would be a way to say, hey, I have someone who's not an administrator, but I do want to give that person direct access to just this tool. So I can come in here and I can click on add coordinator. I'll see an option to select someone from my membership, and I can say, here's, Minnie. Minnie is not an administrator, but if I select and add her here, Minnie now gets treated like an administrator, but only has access to gift membership or whatever other options I assign Minnie as a coordinator to. That does mean Minnie would see the control panel option when she logs in, but when she goes to the control panel, she will only see the options that she's been added as a coordinator to. So there's a chance when a coordinator gets to the control panel, they will only see a handful of tabs, maybe not all of them. And if that's the case, they'll only see in those tabs of the control panel the options that they've been assigned to. This is one of two ways to add a coordinator. We can also add a coordinator over in the club tab, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So this is the first way to add a coordinator, just one function by function. We can just say Miniwood now has access to gift memberships. We can save that option and close. And we've updated those changes. I did see someone ask about how do we set up the metrics in the dashboard. So while we're talking about configuring the control panel, it's the same process that we just went through, except for when we head over to the dashboard tab of the control panel. Now, when we click configure, instead of configuring what modules are available or configuring, who's a coordinator, when we click configure while we're on the dashboard option, we get the option to change what metrics we see on our dashboard. Now, again, this is per administrator. So if I change this, it's only changing for me. It's not changing for other people. And I can say, I don't really care about how many members log in. I don't really care about, the status counts. And I don't care about the storefront revenue, but I do care about, how many members we have versus non-members. And I care about, how many members of each level we have. And I can just click and choose. So these are all the available metrics to me. And these are all of the metrics I've chosen to see. And when I save that option, you'll see my dashboard changes to reflect all the metrics that I've selected. We can see there's the number of members versus non-members. I've got 56 non-members, 27 members, so on and so forth. So we can kind of play around with the metrics. I highly recommend you just come into this section, turn on any metrics that seem interesting, check them out. If they become useful, you can keep them. If they're not useful, you can always come back here and take them off at any time. And one last time, that is always available to you. So the metrics that you select here are for your login. Other administrators will not be affected by changes that you make here. So now let's talk about, I've been talking about administrators and coordinators a lot. Let's head over to the club tab. Again, it could be association or organization, but the tab that's between money communications. When you go to the club tab, let's talk about if you've had a change of board and you've added a new administrator, or you need to add a new coordinator, or if you need to remove, say, an old president or an old administrator. The way we would do that is we would head over to the club tab of the control panel. And in the setup section, you will see administrators slash coordinators. So that is the option right here. On this page, you will see all of your administrators and all of your coordinators. And in fact, you'll see right at the bottom of that list, there's Minnie Wood, who I just added as a coordinator. So now she's on the list of coordinators. So this is where you can see a quick list of everyone who is currently an administrator or a coordinator. If someone is an administrator and they shouldn't be, on this administrators list, you can click the little trash can icon here and it will remove them as an administrator. Now, obviously, these controls are very sensitive. You don't want to take away control from someone who should have it. And you don't want to grant control to someone else who does have or should have it. I always recommend that you keep a relatively short list of full website administrators. I usually recommend something between 3 and 5 is usually, a comfort spot. You can definitely have more. You can definitely have less. There's no problem there. The reason I recommend keeping that list small is because when you're a website administrator, you have access to every single function in the control panel. There's no limits. You have access to add other administrators. So this administrators coordinator page is only available to these two people on this website right now. So I'm logged in as Martin Smith, so I'm an administrator, and I can, add other coordinators, add other administrators, remove other administrators. It also means when someone is an administrator that they have complete access to ClubExpress support. And what I mean by complete access, I mean they can ask ClubExpress support to do things like, turning on extra cost modules. So say, hey, I want to pay $200 or $300 a year for ad hoc reporting, or I want to turn my website off entirely. I want to shut my website down. If someone is an administrator, they have the right to do that. If someone should not have the level of access to contact ClubExpress and say, hey, turn my website off, or hey, bill my website for this function, they should not be a full website administrator. Alternatively, they should be, if they need extra controls, but they shouldn't have that complete access, you might want them to be a website coordinator. So a coordinator can be given different functions that they have, administrative like access to. But they do not have that kind of complete unfettered access to do things like turning the website off, or getting charged for other things, or adding and removing other administrators. When someone is a coordinator, so like we did for Minnie just a minute ago, we said Minnie is a coordinator of the gift memberships option. When we want to add a coordinator, instead of just adding a name to the list, it's pretty simple for administrators. You just hit add, and you add a person, and that person is now an administrator. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. If we want to remove it, it's just that same process, but backwards. We click the trash can and say remove. But for coordinators, it's a little bit more involved. For a coordinator, we say add a coordinator, and we land on this page that says member currently not selected. We do that same select process where we say, I'm going to choose Greg Cho again here. I want Greg to be a coordinator. And we come in here and we'll see all the different functions in the control panel. So you'll see it's broken up by the same tabs: people, website, money, club. communications. So all the different functions that someone might have access to, and we can go down the list and just check off anything that should be available to them. And we can even go as far as to say, let's just check everything. I can just use the check all or uncheck all options to just give someone blanket access. So if someone should be like an administrator, but they shouldn't quite have that option to add other administrators and add other, like do things like turn the website off or charge the organization, for additional tools. We can come in here and say, I want to make someone almost an administrator. I want to give them access to everything. The only thing they can't do is add other administrators and have that kind of complete access to the website. So I could check everything and hit save. And now I've got Greg Cho on the list as a kind of complete access coordinator, not a full website administrator. I can also do things like limit someone's access. So I can come back into Greg Cho if I ever wanted to take some access away or add additional access when I'm looking at that person on the list of coordinators. This little red toolbox icon here, that shows us what functions are available. And I can come in here and I can, you know, take everything away if I wanted to. And I can cherry pick and I can say, Greg needs access to the people manager and Greg needs access to update the homepage and web pages. But that's really it. All Greg's going to do is manage membership and update information on, web pages. And I can just save that. And that way, that person only has access to those functions and their control panel will be much, much smaller. They'll only see the functions that have been assigned to them on the control panel. I've been keeping one eye on the chat a little bit. Some people were asking about the numbers in the sides here. That's the member number. Whenever someone has a profile on a ClubExpress website, they are assigned a unique member number, and that's just all that is. So it's just a way in case there's two people with the same name. So Martin Smith, let's here is the original administrator for the website. So I'm member number one. And Martin Smith is not a particularly unique name. So if I look up Martin Smith, I might get two people in my organization named Martin Smith. It's just a way to differentiate which one's which. So Martin Smith 1, I know that is my membership number on this website, so I know that that's the one to select. If I have Martin Smith 78, I might want to double check that that's correct. Another question I saw is that someone noticed in this particular case, Rick is set up as an administrator and also as a coordinator. You can do that. It doesn't really hurt anything, but it also doesn't really do anything. If someone's an administrator, that overrides their access. So, Rick is set up as a coordinator for interests and just interests. So that means that Rick is a coordinator for interests, but Rick is actually a full administrator here, so Rick has access to everything. So that is more important than the coordinator status. So this means nothing. And if I were to delete this and say, there's no reason for him to be on that list, that doesn't actually change Rick's access at all. A couple other interesting things when we're talking about this page. There is an option to set up favorites. So I kind of mentioned it in passing pretty quickly at the beginning that there's the control panel option and then there's the favorites option. Once again, you'll only see favorites if you're an administrator or a coordinator, but it's an option to have little shortcuts to access things. So if you're not very comfortable yet with navigating the control panel, you can come in here and you'll see I access the people manager all the time. So instead of having to click control panel, switch to the people tab and click people manager, if I go back to my homepage, I can bypass that just by clicking favorites, people manager. And it jumps me straight into the people manager without me having to go find that in the control panel. I think that's really, really useful, especially for new admins. You can edit your favorites in one of two ways. You can click edit favorites here. And just like the dashboard option, my favorites are mine. And you'll notice that the setup here is very similar to the dashboard option. I can select whatever options I want for me, and any other administrator can have their own favorites as well. Now, I believe there is a slight lag in the system right now that we're working on fixing, where if I change something here, let's say I want to add club titles to the list and save. I don't think, yeah, it doesn't show up immediately. I might have to log out and log back in before that shows up on the website. That's something we're working on fixing. It's on our list of updates. But right now, I would have to log out of the website and log back in, and whatever I added would show up there. So that's one way to edit favorites. Another way to edit favorites is if we're back on that same administrators coordinators page, any administrator can edit the favorites for someone else. So I can come in here and I can edit Rick's favorites. And I can say Rick wants, club titles on his favorites. And he also wants to, keep an eye on the domain names to make sure that they're all, up to date. And we can save that. And the next time Rick logs in, those will be listed as Rick's favorites. And we can do the same thing for coordinators. Now you'll notice when I was editing my favorites, because I am a full website admin, I have a long list of what I might be able to add to my favorites. But a website coordinator who has fewer functions, if we choose Mini Wood down here, there's no options because she hasn't logged in as a coordinator yet. But let's say Larry Joe here. Am I not seeing? There we go. There's some favorites. Someone who has actually logged in and used their coordinator functions. Devin Trainer on this list is a coordinator of just the people manager and the user data removal requests. So I only have those options available to me to use as favorites. I cannot set a favorite that I do not have access to. All right, so that's kind of the process of adding other administrators, adding other coordinators. Again, I definitely recommend that you have, a relatively small list. My recommendation is usually 3 to 5. You don't want to have just one administrator because if something happens to that administrator, they get sick, they're not available, they leave the organization. Suddenly, there's no one with full control access to the website. So you definitely want to have at the very least 2 administrators. So that way, if Martin Smith were to go on vacation, then Rick would be able to kind of go in and manage the site, in Martin's absence. But everyone else, usually I recommend keeping the list of coordinators, a little bit more extensive and detailed for people who need access to doing things like setting up favorites. Let's talk now about using the people manager. So once again, I can either go to the control panel and click on people and go to people manager, or if I just jump to my homepage for a second, I know that I have People Manager set up as one of my favorites. So I'm just going to go to Favorites in the top right and click People Manager. This is a tool that I think any administrator that uses ClubExpress should have pretty good understanding of. If not just for everyday use, then for use in your own profile, for use when emergencies come up, if you need to add or remove someone from the system. This is just a really important section of the control panel. When we look at the people manager, there's a few things we can do here. You'll notice when we land on this page for the first time, we see a handful of buttons across the upper right-hand corner. But in my opinion, the most important part of the people manager is the search function. This is where we can come and filter down to find specific members. Now, when you first land on the people manager, it's going to have a search pre-filled for you. And that's just what we call our default search. It is the most commonly used search in all of ClubExpress, which is just show me my members. You'll see there's an option to search for non-members or search for both members and non-members, but most commonly people search for members. And most commonly people are searching for active and expired members. So that's when we're talking about member status here. There's a lot of different statuses. Most of these aren't relevant to most searches, but active and expired is the most relevant. So that means all of my members who are in good standing and anyone who's expired recently is still going to show up as well. Just because someone expired yesterday doesn't necessarily mean that I want to exclude them from, a generic search that I'm performing. As a part of the default search, we also leave last name here and we leave it blank. If you just hit search with it blank, it just shows you all of your active and expired members. But we leave this blank last name field here because a lot of times people are coming and looking for someone specific, and just doing a last name search is usually enough to find the person you're looking for. So if I say, I'm looking for Carol Brady, I can just say Brady and hit enter, and I will find Carol Brady. and I can just roll that back. I don't have to be fully precise with it either. I can just do part of it. So if I say, I don't know if it's Brady, Brady or Bradey, I'm just going to do, Brad instead of the full Brady, and it'll still pull it up. So if I just have a portion of that last name, even just BR should probably find what I'm looking for. So you can usually filter down to find the person you're looking for that way. That's a really useful little like tool that we leave there. Something that I think eludes people for a long time is that there's a lot more powerful searches you can do with the people manager. So if we're not looking necessarily for a specific person, but a group of people, we can alter our search. So instead of searching for last name, you'll notice these are little drop downs. These are little select list menus. And we can say, instead of last name, I have all this different criteria I can search for. I can do things like someone's postal code. So if I know there's storms coming and I want to see who's in the path of the storm, I can say, hey, show me your zip code. I want to look for, so I think we have a couple people in that zip code. Well, but we can search for a number of things like people by member type, and it'll show me all of my organization's membership types and say, show me all of my staff and gold sponsors and gold level members, and I can search. And so I can come in here and select different membership types. There's a lot of different criteria we can search for. Committees, we can search for interest groups, we can search for people in different states, different cities, a whole lot of useful information. Some of my favorite search criteria in the People Manager are these bottom three here. I love the recent addition option. It'll say 30, 60, 90 days. If you are doing, membership drives or trying to get your membership numbers up, you can always reach out to your new members. And you can find them just by going to People Manager and saying, show me everyone in the last 30 days. I don't have anyone that joined in the last 30 days. What about 90 days? So you can go and see all of the people that joined within that last period of time. I haven't set up any new memberships on this trial site in the last 90 days, apparently. But we can also do things like searching for people that need to renew. So Club Express has something called the renewal cycle, meaning, most of our organizations are annual renewal. So, you renew your membership, you'll either pay for it or maybe it's free, but it lasts for usually 12 months. And at the end of that 12 months, they need to renew their membership. And we can say, if anyone is due for renewal, they would be quote unquote in their renewal cycle. And we can say, yes, show me everyone that needs to renew. And we'll see, here's all the people that need to renew their membership. Some of them are expired. Some of them might be active, but just within that renewal window. There's also an option, one of my personal favorites, with pending payment. This just shows me everyone who has an outstanding transaction on my website. And I can search for that. And you'll see, here's all of the people on the website who currently, you'll see they have this little $sign. That's a little marker that says, hey, this person owes me money. I love this one, especially if you're an organization that processes a lot of transactions. If you have events that have fees tied to them, this is a great way to just make sure you're staying on top of people who have outstanding transactions. Additionally, if you were to receive a check and you wanted to submit that payment, so let's say, Jenny Cho here has an outstanding payment and I get a check from Jenny Cho, I can just say, show me everyone with pending payment. I find Jenny Cho. I can click on the $sign, and clicking on that $sign from this page will actually take me right into the payment page. And I can say, Jenny Cho signed up for a $10 Halloween party. She sent me a $10 check. And I can say, great, I received that check. The check number was 123. And I can record that check payment. And now, as soon as I record that check payment, you'll notice Jenny Cho is no longer on the list because my filter says with pending payment. I submitted that check and marked Jenny as having paid by check, and she drops off the list because she's now paid and she no longer has a pending payment. I will go through that process again. I know I clicked that really quickly. That's a process that is vital to a lot of our Club Express organization. Sorry, I blanked on the word organization for a second. But collecting and marking payments due and marking payments received is very important to a lot of organizations. So I'll go through that process again in just a second, in slow motion, so that we can all see kind of what options are available to us. But This is how we kind of conduct a search on the people manager. We can change our filters. We can find different people in a number of ways. If we ever make a filter that's too complex, you'll see there's an option to add filters here. And we can say, hey, I want to filter by multiple criteria. I can add criteria. I can change those criteria. I can say I want people in a certain zip code. I want people in a certain category. And I can really narrow it down to a really fine subset of people. If this ever gets too complex and I've added too much detail, there's always the little reset button, and that'll just reset it back to that standard all active and expired members option here. And if I'm just looking for active, I can take expired off and say search. So I can really kind of get a lot of good use out of the search function here and get the search results that I really want here. And then there's a number of things we can do with that. We can do things like exporting that into a list. If we see the little actions button here, there's a lot of things we can do with this actions button. I recommend you kind of like poke around at that and see what it can do. But the most common thing I see get used is this little export this list to CSV, and it'll download all the details about the people in those search results. So when I look at active members, I've got 27 of them, and I can export all the details about those active members into a list of into a downloadable Excel file. Um, Now let's talk about what we can do, with our members when we have this search, what options we have in this sections here. So when we're looking at our members, we'll see a handful of icons. The most common icon that people are going to click is the pencil icon. We talked about this a little bit ago when we were talking about password resets. When we click on that pencil, it takes us into a member's profile. And this is where we can get into go and update things for other people. So this isn't my own profile. I'm looking at the profile for someone else, and I can go in and I can update their basic member information. So things like their address, their email, their phone number, their emergency contact. I can also do things like answering additional member data questions. So, if your organization has organization specific questions, so things like license numbers or personal interests, we can manually create our own additional questions, and that information is stored there. There's also an option for doing things like updating their listing in the membership directory. And then once again, there's options for things like resetting your password. So that shows up over here. So this is how we got there a little bit earlier. Really importantly, I like to show off two links here that are really important for keeping track of membership payments and transactions. Over here in the history section, the first two links here are transaction history and payment history. So, transaction history are all of the transactions that have been incurred by the member. It does not relate directly to the actual payment submitted towards it. These are just things that they have done that have caused some sort of charge. Now, sometimes you'll see things like $0 charges here. So if they change their membership or sign up for a free event, that does technically create a $0 transaction, and it still gets tracked here. But if they do anything that has any dollar value attached to it, most commonly things like donations, signing up for events, or renewing their membership, you'll see that here. You can also see if whether or not it has been paid for. And if you want to see the details about the payment, you can click on the little receipt icon here, and it'll show us more details. You'll see the payment, and we can actually click the additional receipt to see the payment receipt as well. And there's the full details of the payment. Check to club. Here's the breakdown of what they bought. It gets more and more detailed as we go, and we can even print that receipt to create a little PDF download of the receipt. We could email to them if they need it for, any other purposes, tax write-offs or something like that. The other page I was talking about was the payment history. So down here under payment history, this is where we can come and see, hey, there's that check that was paid. And then we can do that same process in reverse. So I see that there is a check payment. I don't know what it was applied to, but if I click the receipt, I can see the details about the transaction. So that's where we can go and check on the individual person's payment history. So if someone says, "Hey, my credit card was charged for, this transaction. Can you tell me why?" You can always click into a person's profile, look up what they paid for. That is something that happens, relatively often. People, forget that they signed up for an event and then they see, that your organization is listed on their credit card statement. They call you and ask what it was for. That's how you go and find it. If someone has an outstanding payment or if you need to add a charge to them. So if we get back to these search results, I'm going to keep picking on Audrey here. If we need to manually charge someone for something, that doesn't happen very often. So normally, if you are wanting someone to get charged for something, the website will automatically create that charge. So if they renew their membership and there's a fee attached to it, that charge gets created by the system as a part of them renewing their membership. If you've set up an event that has a fee tied to it, when they register for it, it will automatically add a charge to their profile for them to submit payment for that event. Um, you don't usually need to come in here and manually add a charge, but something that gets asked a lot is, hey, we need to charge this person for something outside the system, or alternatively, we need to credit them for something, they're getting a refund for, a trip they missed or something. You can manually control charges and credits. So if we jump a couple icons over here, this little double credit card icon, that is where we can go and we can manually apply a charge or a credit. If we apply a charge, it will just add a pending charge to their profile for however much they owe. So we'll say, hey, they owe us $25. We have to add a description here. We can say for, breaking a vase. They broke a vase at our clubhouse. They're going to pay us back for it. That's not something the website has any context for, so we have to manually create it. We are not going to charge any tax for it. And we'll say this is related to, we're just going to call it a donation. They're going to make a $25 donation to pay for that broken vase. And I'm going to say I'm going to charge them. Once I submit that charge, you'll notice the $ icon appears. So I have added a charge manually. Anytime someone has an outstanding charge for membership renewal, donation, event, sign up, anything like that, they're going to get this little $ icon until it is paid. If I click on that $ icon, you'll see for breaking a vase, $25, and then we can submit a payment for it towards that amount. So Audrey actually has a $25 credit available, so I could actually just pay $0 because she has a credit on her account. Something that gets asked a lot when we're talking about payments is if there is a credit for a canceled transaction. So whenever you cancel a transaction, here, let's actually go ahead and we'll pay for this. I'm not going to use that credit. I'm going to say don't use the credit. I want to pay for this with a check. Once again, I'm going to say we received a check payment, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to record that check payment. You'll notice the $ now disappears because that transaction has been paid. Something we get asked a lot is there an option to refund transactions? Now, if you have set up your ClubExpress website to use one of our two payment options, which is either what we call the premium payments or the basic payments. Again, I'm not going into full detail on this. We'll be doing a webinar going into painstaking detail on reporting and refunding transactions here in a couple weeks. So tune in for that. I do want to briefly just talk about what it looks like to cancel a transaction and how that might get refunded. So I've paid for that broken vase for Audrey here. If I go into my transaction history, we will see there's a miscellaneous charge. If we look at the details, it was $25. Here's this transaction for breaking a vase. Let's say this was done in error and we didn't actually want to charge her $25, but she did send us a check. We recorded it and we paid for it. Alternatively, you could imagine that this was paid for online by a credit card. So if Audrey logged in and saw that she had an outstanding credit, it would actually ask her to pay by credit card. She might have submitted that payment. If we click on this trash can, there's an option to cancel a transaction. You may not see the option to delete a transaction. Delete would be if the payment was cash or check or entered manually in any other way. Their option to delete both the payment and the transaction at the same time would generate no refund, would generate no credit or anything like that. But if I cancel a paid transaction, Now that it's been canceled, it's going to stay on there. It's not deleted, it's been canceled. It's going to create a credit. And if we go look at our payment credit history on Audrey's profile, you'll see canceled transaction, miscellaneous charge, $25. So I just canceled a $25 transaction that was paid for by check, and that gives us a $25 credit. That credit can be used towards future things like signing up for events or renewing your membership or any other transaction on the website. It functions kind of like a gift card that's loaded into their account on the website, and that can just be used in the future. So there's no need to refund it. If it was paid by credit card and someone says, "Hey, I really need this money back on my credit card," there's two different ways you go about it depending on your payment option that you've chosen, be it the premium option or the basic option. If it is the premium option, then you would just uh, there's an option to go to the control panel. Sorry, not do not click the pencil there. If you're the premium user, you would go to the control panel, go to money, and then in open credits, there's a process you can go through to add funds to a refund account and then credit that back to their credit card. If you are on the basic payments option, you have access to what's called the Stripe dashboard, completely different from the dashboard in the control panel. It's actually on a different web page entirely that we'll go over in a future webinar. I don't have access to it at the moment, but you can go in there and you can refund that. But either way, once you're done refunding, it should zero out on the person's profile. If you're using the basic payments option, once you've canceled, oopsie, sorry, not transaction history. If we go back to payment credit history, if we're in the basic payment option, a mistake that happens a lot is if you refund through the Stripe dashboard, it does not automatically record that refund here. We do have to come in here and manually say, this has been refunded. So when we click on the pencil for that credit, we would say refund, and that would be manually refunded. We would also do this same process and say it's manually refunded if we were to refund them by sending them a check or handing them cash or sending them some sort of external payment, be it Zelle or Venmo or something like that. We could refund it that way and then just manually mark this refunded. If we refund them through Stripe or an external method like check, cash, Zelle, or refund, and we don't mark this as refunded, they might accidentally essentially get to double dip on that credit. So they would get it back in their account, either, refunded to their credit card or any other way. And then they would also, if we leave this alone, they would also get a discount on a future purchase. So you want to always be careful when you're doing refunds that you track that very, directly. All right, the final thing I want to go over, and I'll only spend a couple minutes on it because I know I'm already over my normal hour time, is emails. So we've talked about accessing the people manager and what we can do there, and tracking payments. Again, keep an eye out in a couple weeks for a webinar on processing refunds and getting transaction reports. We're going to do a whole finances webinar here in a couple weeks. But I want to spend the last few minutes of today's webinar just talking about the very basics of sending an email out to your members. It's something that once you become an administrator for the very first time, it's usually pretty early in your days as an administrator that you realize, oh, I need to let someone know that they can, that I'm a new administrator, or I need to let my members know that, the board has changed, or there's an upcoming event, or membership dues are coming. For one reason or another, most administrators need to send emails somewhat regularly. We can do that in our communication section of the control panel. So if we head over to the control panel, head to communications, there's an option under website modules called emailing. And I'm just going to walk through the process of creating a pretty generic email to all of my members. So the most simple email we might send is we would come to this emailing administration page, and we can hit the add emailing button to start a new draft email. And there's three things you have to really think about when you're sending an email. Your basic information, which is essentially just who's this email from and what's the subject. So we click on basic info. I'm just going to focus in on the important stuff here. So the from email address, this is just, a fake email for martin@email.com. It's coming from Martin Smith. I want to send it. You can either send it now or on a future date. You can actually schedule it for a time in the future. I'm just going to say I'm going to send this email right now. I can say the subject is, any subject. If it's about membership renewal, you can just put the subject line. That's what's going to show up in the subject. You don't have to worry. You'll see why later. You don't have to worry about manually CCing or BCCing someone here. You have the option to if you would like, but you don't need to because we're going to handle who this email goes to in just a minute. For content, always leave it as HTML. There is an option to send it as plain text, but that removes a lot of the fun kind of options to do things like links and personalization that we'll see later. And then there's three checkboxes. We get the set urgent flag, we get the track opens, and we get the personalization allowed checkbox. I always recommend don't set the urgent flag very often. If you set the urgent flag for a lot of emails that you send, they tend to get either ignored by users because they see urgent emails and they go, oh, that's probably spam. Or sometimes if you set an urgent flag, it gets ignored by email providers. So, like, I know specifically we had issues with Gmail a few years ago where an organization was sending out a lot of urgent emails. And Gmail eventually was just like, there's no way every email you send is urgent, this must be spam, and they stopped delivering the emails for a little bit. So I usually recommend just not setting it to urgent unless it truly is very, very urgent. Um, if you really want your email to get read, one thing I like to do instead of setting the urgent flag is use the track opens option. This just adds a little bit of code to the email to let me see if someone has or has not opened it. There are reports once the email goes out that says, here's the list of people you sent this email to, and here's whether or not they opened it or not. You can also set an option to resend that email to anyone who has not opened it. So if someone is on that list having not opened the email, you can say 2 days later, I want to send that email again. So if they don't open it for 2 days, they get that email again. If you leave this at 0, it will not resend the email. So you see right there, it says enter 0 to not to resend the email. So leaving that at 0 just means the email goes out one time. And then finally, personalization allowed. That's another one I like to check. That just allows me to add what we call email tags to the email, where we can say, hello member's name, kind of like in parentheses. We don't have to put it in parentheses, but I'm saying, kind of, we can insert their name instead of saying hello members or hello all or, hello club. We can actually say, hello Devin, hello Evan, hello Steve. We can personalize that email to each person that receives it. Once we save that, you'll see we get a little green check mark letting us know our basic information is done. Then we get to the distribution list, and this is who this email is going to. There's a lot of options for us to do really crazy things here, but if we're just trying to send an email to all of my members, we can choose the option create a new list. And in this little to drop down, these are all the different criteria we can use to send the email to. So instead of picking names from the list, if we have, 500 members, we're not going to make you go check off every individual person you want to send an email to. Instead, you can just come in here, find the criteria you want. One thing a lot of people say is, well, I don't want to read the whole list just to find what I'm looking for. If that's the case, you can actually click here and just start typing all members. I typed all, and these are all of the email options that contain the word all. And hey, look, all active members. That's a really great one. I hit add all active members. So now I've added all active members to the list. We can get much more complex with this if we want. We can do things like excluding people from the list. So we say, hey, I want all of my members, but I don't want a certain type of member. So we can say, type here, members by selected type, and then it'll ask me, okay, which type do you mean? I can say, I don't want to send this to my students, and I can exclude. So now it's going to all of my members except my student memberships. So that's how we kind of build a distribution list. We can get more and more complex with this. I'm going to keep it relatively simple because we're trying to, again, build a pretty standard email. We can say, this is a great email, and I can even save this list. So I don't have to go through this process again. I can say, I want to save this as all members, not students. So I can save that option. And if I save now, next time I'm building an email, when I go to edit my distribution list, you'll see there's an option to use a saved list. and I should now have all members, not students, as an option to select from. But now that I've got my distribution list set up, all I have to do is just draft the body of my email. And for a simple email, normally we just do some text. So I'm going to grab the one column text option, drag it over to my body, and then use the pencil icon to write my email. So we can say, hello, members, and then I can really not good at typing today for some reason. And we can just write out our email, fill in the body of our email that way. And we can save, and that's it. We can fill in our email as we like, and then hit ready for delivery, and we can send that email out. If we wanted to fill in someone's name instead of saying hello members, we want to personalize that. Because we checked that personalize option on the basics page, we can come back here where it says hello members, and we can actually take members out. You'll see there's this little extra option that says select tag. There's a lot of member details here that we can select from, but 99 times out of 100, what people want is first name. And then you put your cursor where you want that tag to go, and you'll say insert tag. Click that button right there, and it'll add this little squiggle first name, like double tilde option right there. We can just leave that alone and save. And so now when this email goes out, anywhere where this little squiggle first name is, it will replace that with the first name of the person receiving that email. So if that email goes out to, our Dan, it'll say hello Dan. If it goes to me, it'll say hello Devin. If it goes to Evan, it'll say hello Evan, so on and so forth. So each person that receives it will receive a personalized email. Um, yeah, so that's really what it boils down to. One thing when it comes to distribution list and emails, a question I get all the time is when I save a distribution list here, is it saving the people on the list right now for the future? Or does that mean that it say, oh, I just saw that exact question pop into the chat. I get this question all the time. When I choose save, does it save the list as it is right now, or does it save the criteria? It saves the criteria. So when I save this now, it's going to send it to everyone who is an active member and not the people who are student as of today. But if 6 months from now I use this same list, obviously my list of active members might have changed in the intervening 6 months. That list will be different when I send the email in 6 months. So there's no need to come in here and resave this over and over. You can just use the same list, and then at the time that you send the email, it'll recompile that list of people. So there's no need to update that. You can just use that save distribution list. We try not to do things in terms of a list of names. We do things in terms of a list of criteria that is rerun every time the email is sent. Um, so let's see. Oh, so I'm going to start going over some questions now. That's most of the content I had for today. Just a couple questions. Does the email automatically BCC? So yes, when you send an email out, it does not include the entire list of people that were sent the email, to everyone. So there's no option for people to reply all to everyone that was sent it. It is a blind copy to each individual person. It's actually not even the way our email server works. It's not even blind copy. Everyone gets their own unique version of the email. So it feels like it was sent directly to them. There's no like CC or reply all option for something like that. If you're interested in a reply all option, you might want to go watch some of our tutorials on the forum list serve. So there's an option to set up your forums to be an email address where people can kind of communicate with everyone in a list serve form. But the way these emails go, there's not a way for people to reply all back to everyone who was sent the email. Another thing a lot of people ask is, is there a way to see who the email is going to? Little column A, little column B. So if we come over here and we look at our distribution list, you'll see there's a little drop down option, and we can see, oh, my browser does this sometimes. There we go. We can see, on this demo website, we are sending the email. We are expecting it to go to 8 people. You'll see there's a large number of invalid people here for me. That's because a lot of the profiles on my website don't have email addresses. So those are, when someone doesn't have an email address, they are marked as invalid. but 8 people should successfully be sent the email. We don't get a list of names at this point, but once the email is sent and we say ready for delivery and the email goes out, once it's sent by our email server, we will get a report and we can actually go back to our email admin page and we can search for previous emails. So we can see things like here's a sent email that we sent previously. And you'll see there's a little graph icon where you can see, how many people was it sent to, how many people opened it. And then we can also see the little blue journal icon over here. So for this email that was sent, there's that draft I created just a few minutes ago. For a sent email, we can click on the blue journal icon to get reports about the email. So we can see, who opened the email, were there any failed deliveries, show me the exact people who were and were not sent this email. Let's see. Evan, are there any other pressing questions? I know I've gone well over my normal hour that I try to keep my webinars to, but I wanted to have this one be as informational as possible. Are there any questions uh, that we could circle back to?
Well, I do see one here as will recipients of an email be able to reply to the email address that they
Yeah.
sent from the emailing module?
Yes. So there is an option. So whenever we look at our basics here, whatever the from email address here, if someone does a reply, that is the email address that reply would go to. So again, that's back in our email basics. So when we're first creating that email for basic info, we hit edit basics, and that's where that from email address is. And we'll see that's who the email is coming from. And when they reply, it'll go there. Someone asked, I didn't see how to get to starting an email. So again, if we pop back to the control panel, it's where we go to start any kind of admin function is the control panel. It's under communications. And to start a new email, it's website modules, emailing. So emailing is right there. And then to start a new email, we hit add emailing. It's right in there. And then once we've added a new email, we get a blank template for this email again. Someone is saying that buttons aren't working well. So when you, this is an issue that comes up a lot, and it's very hard for us to deal with. It's something we've worked on for a while, but there's not really a good solution to it. So there's an option when you're creating a link in an email to have that link be a button, which is supposed to kind of look in this example on our website like this. The issue with trying to tell a let's create a link really quick so we can see what it's supposed to look like. Let's just say it's a link to our homepage. So there's a little link button. We can, kind of have that button there. That's what it looks like on our website. But when we say the word button, what we mean is a little bit of code behind the scenes that says this is a quote unquote button. Um, every email tool, Yahoo, Gmail, Outlook, they all have their own code that says this is what buttons should look like. And we at ClubExpress don't have a say of, hey, Gmail should have buttons look like this or should have buttons look like that. There's not a good way for us to override what Yahoo, Gmail, and Outlook say a button should look like. Overall, if you want a button to look a very specific way, one thing you can do is either create an image outside of ClubExpress, and instead of doing the button option, you can do the image option. You can make a link that looks like a certain button. And there's a lot of tools all over the internet. ClubExpress doesn't have a built-in one, but there's a lot of tools all over the internet to just create a JPEG of a button that says, whatever you want it to say. And then you can do that link as an image instead of as the code that says this is a link that says it's a button. It's really frustrating. I don't like that it works that way, but we don't have a lot of power to say, hey, Gmail, Yahoo, and Outlook should change the way they handle buttons. Um, so, does email admin search show the history of all emails the club has sent to members? That's another kind of yes, kind of no question. If we go back to our emailing administration, it's all of the emails that have been sent from this email page. So anything you'll see who created it, who edited it. So you can see it's pretty much Martin Smith here down the road. But if you have multiple admins working on emails, you can see the emails that other admins and other coordinators created. It does not list Event emails. So something if you go watch any event tutorials or event webinars, we'll often talk about sending events much like what we just did, or sending emails much like what you just did, but from inside an event. This page does not include those event emails. Another thing this page doesn't include is system emails. I won't go into too much depth about that, but if someone renews their membership or incurs some sort of transaction fee, they'll usually get an email notification saying, hey, you registered for an event. Hey, you renewed your membership. Hey, you owe us $25 for that donation or something. All of those kind of notification emails live in the system email page. So there's tons and tons of emails here that Club Express may send out for any reason. We don't automatically track all of those emails going out. There's just a little bit too much data for us to kind of track and manage for every organization. If you have an email, you say like, hey, it's really important for us to track all of our renewal notices. That's a really popular one. These renewal notices right here, if you say it's really important for for us to know who is being sent the renewal notice and optionally who is opening it. When you look at a system email, there's a little wrench icon over here, and you can say configure email, and you can actually check, and we already did it for this one, track opened. And if you track that, not only will it keep track of who's opened the email, it'll keep track of who has sent that email. And as soon as you turn that on, you'll get this little bar graph here, which can show us, within a certain time frame. Again, this is a demo website, so we don't have tons of people renewing all the time. But you can say, hey, in the last 3 months, how many people were sent this email and how many people opened it. Um, I don't have any there, but it'll show you if it was sent and whether or not, when it was sent and whether or not it was opened. It doesn't automatically do that for all system emails. And honestly, I wouldn't even recommend doing that for all system emails, but maybe cherry pick a handful of emails that it's important for you to know whether or not that was sent or opened it. Um, Someone asked, in the case that they don't choose to turn this on for a renewal, the emails still go out. So if you don't turn on tracking, these emails still get sent. We just don't track whether or not someone opened it or whether or not they received it. It just gets sent as normal. Most times people don't turn this tracking on. It's system email notifications. 99.9% of the time, organizations just leave this alone. But there are use cases, especially around the renewal emails, where people prefer to set up specific controls or alter the email to say specific things. All right. It looks like questions have slowed down. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the wrap up stage of this webinar. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I will put the recording of this video up on our YouTube channel in a couple days, probably Thursday or Friday. Keep an eye out for it on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and review anything we went over today. Also, keep an eye out for an email from us in the next week or two. We are working currently on the content and scheduling for that detailed option to go over the different payment options we have. We're going to do kind of a deep dive into the premium payments option and the basic payments option, and we'll take a look at the reporting and the refunding for premium and the reporting and refunding for Stripe, the Stripe dashboard through our basic payments option. So we'll be going into that in detail in a couple weeks. So keep an eye out. If you have any questions or anything, always reach out to our support team, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Thank you so much, everyone.